opinions expressed on this show do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Return the Jewels. Also, there's explicit language. Hey everyone, welcome to our 8th episode of Return the Jewels. This is the 11th of November, so we're just coming off the election announcement of Biden and Kamala Harris winning. And so this week, it's kind of topical, not really, but we have a special guest, my friend Katherine Ella Wood. She's of Jamaican descent and Indian descent. And so in terms of representation, seeing someone like Kamala Harris enter the White House and, the highest position that has ever been, held by a woman or a Black woman or an Indian woman or, bunch of historic things. For her, the representation for her to see that, it's like, what do you call those? Syllogism? No, analogs. It's like seeing an analog of yours or a potential analog of yours do things that you may not have been able to, well, whatever, representation, all that jazz. But jazz is actually what she does. She is a jazz singer, very gifted. She went to Juliard to study, and that's like a really, you look it up. It's in like all the music movies. The characters go to Juilliard. So there's that. And anyways, it's a good conversation. We talked about, we did our tokenize or fetishize segment. And, but really we got into a lot of like music theory. And it wasn't so much me talking music theory. It was her talking music theory, me nodding my head. But it was really good. It was a really good conversation. And I'm really underselling it right now. Which I shouldn't be doing. So I'm going to end this intro and enjoy the interview.
Hello.
Hey. So we have Katherine Ella Wood. Did I say that right?
Yes.
Sure. Okay, cool. I always ask at the top of all these episodes, just in case. And also, it's maybe you haven't had that issue growing up where people really mess up your name or try to give it like an ethnic slang or swirl.
No, they're just like, is your name really Katherine? And I'm like, yes.
What is the implication behind asking like that?
I think we know. They're
Yeah,
like,
but spell it out.
Catherine? That's a white girl name. Yeah. Like, I think what I get more of, it's funny in Jamaica, my family's Jamaican. It's harder to pronounce Catherine in Jamaica because in Jamaican, in that accent, there's parts of the country where like TH is just not really pronounced. So in Jamaica, my name is Katherine, and so like Miss Kath,
is dropped.
Yeah, the H is dropped. Yeah. Or, or I'll be like Miss Kath, and it's almost easier at the end of a word than in the middle of one between vowels. So, I've definitely gotten a lot of misspells, a lot of angst over whether it's a K or a C. And I'm like, listen, it's K. Is there any other way? Don't get at me with that C garbage. No, I'm not really that strongly one way or another.
Is the C like a European royalty thing? Or like with like Catherine the Great or whatever, those were C Catherines.
That was a C Catherine.
Right. Who are K Catherines?
I don't know. Katerina. I feel like some queen named Katerina or something. I don't really know.
Maybe.
No, but I'm very pleasantly Catherine with a K.
So maybe the C and the K are like hemispherical demarcations.
I'm open to that. That possibility.
The bridge is Louis C.K. No, I'm sorry. That was a really bad joke. Okay.
Louis Catherine.
Louis Catherine.
Why he just says C.K. Yeah. He doesn't really want people to know that, make up their mind. It was a battle in the, in the hospital.
Yeah, and and then for his fans, he could not have an effeminate last name, or else they would stop respecting him.
They really would.
Yeah,
That's why.
that's why.
That's the reason.
Oh. So, Katherine Ella Wood, you are by trade a
Yes.
jazz singer,
Hmm.
and that wasn't always your trade, I'm assuming, or it was.
No, I grew up hearing jazz. Like my main connection to my dad is actually jazz music. It was like the thing we could always talk about.
Yeah.
And I just grew up loving it, hearing Ella Fitzgerald. My middle name is definitely, yes, I have a great grandmother who's Ella Louise, but also she was picked as as my namesake also because of Ella Fitzgerald. And
It's like a
you know,
chicken and the egg situation.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I always loved it. I've always loved to sing. I sang in choir. I sang in school plays. My main love has always been storytelling. So I've mostly gone to school and learned how to act. And I snuck off from rehearsals, on rehearsal breaks, and I would go see what the jazz kids were doing and listen a lot because you can't just like jump into singing jazz. I remember the first time I got up on the stage with an actual live band and I was terrified. Like
When was that?
it must have been like 2012 now.
Oh, so
Maybe.
not too long ago.
No, no, 8 years ago now. But since then, I've really just kept forcing myself to get up and sing with people who are much better than me. And I feel honored that I get to play music with the people I get to play music with. I mean, I haven't really done too much during the pandemic time just because I'm a little nervous about singing in front of people, but I actually was lucky enough to get to sing at a poetry reading last Friday. And I did a show in Southampton for Unity back in June, which was really beautiful. But other than that,
I mean, I remember I shot you at the Soho House, and that's a pretty
yeah, that was a lot of fun.
fancy venue.
Yeah,
It's a fancy club.
yeah. And our first meeting was the only time I've been brave enough to like actively, knowingly do stand up in front of people. Um, and I just started singing and it went poorly and I made some jokes out of it that like only Beyonce should sing certain songs. Like
Oh,
we
that's
like
great.
to party. Yeah.
That's great.
But I had some great people on stage with me that night. Uni Mojica. Um, I had Brendan on the keys. My gosh, I'm blanking on people's names. I've been in
That was
quarantine
like a
for
year
too
and a
long.
half ago. That was a long time
Yeah.
ago now.
Yeah. Brendan Polk on the keys and Samuel Aviso on drums and Steve Wood on bass. Not my brother. Same name as my brother. But yeah, that was a fun night. Yeah.
Steve Wood on bass, not on the woodwinds. Okay, I'm sorry. Bad joke.
Yeah.
Okay. No, so I want to start a line of questioning, and knowing me, I'll probably lose my train of thought. But do you think singing or the ability to sing is a natural thing, a gift, or is it a trainable choice, or both?
I think that there are people who are born with that curiosity and the ear for it.
Okay.
People. Yeah, I was listening to this NPR episode called "Sometimes Sounds Strangely" like years ago, and I was fascinated that singing and talking are essentially the same thing. Now, if you think you can do what, Beyonce does without practice or what Billie Holiday does without practice, you can't. Like to be a singer with a band, you have to learn how to listen. You have to learn how to hear the different notes and the possibilities of notes. You have to learn how to work with the time. You have to learn phrasing. There's an art to using your voice as a means of articulation. You really become an instrument when you sing in that way. So, is it something that everyone can learn to do and make a beautiful sound? I think so. But is it something that everyone's going to jump at the opportunity to do and really learn easily? Absolutely not. You know. So, yes, if you can speak, you can sing.
When you answered the question, you said people are born with a curiosity, not necessarily born with the tools, voice, and ear. So what do you mean by are you thinking, are you implying that the curiosity overpowers the personal uh, or physical attributes?
Um, well, I want to be clear. So I think that some people who have the curiosity might have the inclination as well, where
Okay.
I'm curious about singing because I'm listening to this song and I want to harmonize with it. And I noodled around enough and I figured out where the harmony is. And I want to know what harmony line is that. Oh, I'm singing above. Okay, maybe I'm singing the soprano line. That's what I mean by a curiosity. Whereas, and I'm pairing the curiosity with a natural inclination towards singing. Now, somebody who's born in this world and has been told their whole life that they can't sing but has the desire, that's always the starting ground. I have a student now who's like, I've been told my whole life that I can't sing ever since I was 14. They kicked me out of choir, and I just want to learn how to make a beautiful sound. He'll learn, Everyone has the ability to sing. It's just about, and some people, everyone's anatomy is different. So you might not have an ear that allows you to hear the melody even.
Right.
You might think you're singing the melody, but what you're hearing are the overtones. And so for everyone else, it just sounds like trash. But you're like, why does it sound bad? And then you would need some ear training in order to help your singing sound good. But that doesn't mean that if we give you a song to sing on your own and don't give you anything to harmonize with, that you won't sound good. It's just, are you going to be a singer or are you not going to be a singer? But there's a craft to singing, and some people will be good at it and some people won't, but everyone can make a beautiful noise.
This inclination to develop your natural ability. Okay, let's say you have the natural ability or the natural curiosity. Then the inclination to develop it that kicks in. Is this a willing thing, or is this must be an obligatory thing? You see what I'm saying? Like a purpose thing.
Yeah, for me it has always felt like it's my purpose. No one outside of me has said to me that I have to be a singer. It's
Really?
Yeah, no one, no, definitely not. I growing up, I mean, the way some kids are pressured into playing the violin or playing the cello or playing the piano. That wasn't the case for me as a vocalist. I wanted to do this. And I have always felt, again, this is rooted in storytelling, but that singing was a passion of mine. And to this day, when I'm feeling really down, sometimes I just have to sing to make myself feel better. It's healing for me. That's what music is. And that's the way that I feel it's connected to a sense of purpose.
So singing is a tool of catharsis for you now. Was it a tool of catharsis for you as a child?
Absolutely.
And is that a thing that you hold on to and develop because of that?
You know, yeah, I mean, maybe. I would say that, when something's really great, like you listen to a lot of great love songs, and the great love songs hurt more when you've gone through a breakup, and they're sweeter when you're in love.
Hmm.
Even when you have your child, the nature of lyrics change, and I think that those great songs are great because they transcend just my personal struggle. So for me, singing isn't just about making me feel better and move through my emotions. It's about understanding a story that's I'm living through, but that's not just mine. That's going to be someone else's story too, and it's going to be meaningful to someone else. I love that about jazz. Yes, the words, the notes are very important. They carry a lot of the message when the audience can't really hear what you're saying, but they can just sort of hear what's going on and feel moved by it. Um, but if you listen to the words in a lot of jazz songs, especially the love songs, and most of them are love songs, there is rooted within them a sense of I can move through what I'm feeling. They say sometimes you got to sing the blues to get rid of the blues, and I think that that's very true. I'm trying to think of a specific song that I have listened to on repeat. Um, I remember "I Get Along Without You" very well, being one of those songs that always hits me. I'm even getting emotional just thinking about it. I remember hearing Nina Simone sing this. Mm. And, this was a song that my father introduced to me. And when I was a child, I didn't understand the romantic side of that song.
Yeah.
I just knew that it was a song that moved me, and I missed my dad. I missed my dad being around. And in so many ways, it helped me deal with just missing that parent in my life. And as I grew up, I've fallen in love, or what I think is love. And that's a song that I can come back to and remember, like, I will get along without you very well. And I will miss you and I will cherish you. And I can't cut off the memories and I can't go back and erase what happened, but I can get along without you very well.
The meaning shifts with
Mm-hmm.
time or depending on whatever point of view you have at the time.
Yeah, or what you're going through. I think the words are so deep. It's like Carl Jung would describe it as coming out of the collective unconscious. I would say, like, there are some great songs out there that, and this is what a great song is. It's cathartic, but it's not cathartic on an individual level. It's a human level. And so I don't necessarily feel that Stevie Wonder is a great example of a musician who finds harmony and liberates people through sound. You can't listen to Stevie Wonder and be in a worse mood. You might be in a deeper place than where you started, depending on what Stevie tune you're listening to, but you can't listen to Stevie and not feel like there's some space that's been made inside of you to deal with whatever you're going through.
So when I think about artistic endeavors, not necessarily endeavors, but projects or creative thinking, right? When I think about like comedy or something, I think about how it's about narrative crafting, and what they do is it's like you take a metaphor that has different layers, and the layers have to connect on whatever layers of whatever story you're trying to tell, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you just encode it in this metaphor, right? And so each one of the layers or tendrils of the metaphor will relate to other people on different levels than what you necessarily intended,
Mm-hmm.
because they're nebulous. So that's what I think about like comedy, storytelling, and that kind of stuff. Now with singing, I don't know if like what is it about these kind of like this kind of music? Like, okay, with the music, I guess there's the sound, the melody, the rhythm, all of that stuff that evokes some sort of physical emotional response. But like lyrical crafting, right? I feel like in music or in these songs, and I'm probably making a huge generalization here, is like you drop the expository information, right? If I'm singing a narrative, I'm not giving expository information, as as opposed to it really just being like a second person point of view, where it's just like a dialogue, a conversation. So it's like the things that I say, the language that I use, it's ambiguous and coded enough to get across my point, but also someone like you who's listening as a kid can take that and apply it to a whole other point that wasn't necessarily in the singer or communicator's mind. And so that's how I feel about like lyric crafting in music. But I know that you mentioned this before, that you were starting to develop more personal and original material.
Yeah.
So like what goes into your thought process with both of those things, and are those things bifurcated, or is it like these are the kind of lyrics, this is the kind of rhythm, or do they have like some sort of positive feedback loop where they inform one another?
They definitely do. Back to what we were saying about speaking is singing.
Yeah.
Shakespeare is famously commented on for using language as onomatopoeia. Is this a dagger which I see before me? The handle toward my hand. Come, let me clutch thee. All of those fricatives, all of those,
Right.
it's like the sound of a knife coming out of a
Yeah.
sheath. Shakespeare had like what? Like a blank stage and a couple of props. And, you couldn't print out all these mass textbooks at the time. Everyone couldn't get a full copy of the script. You're getting the line before yours, your cue, and your dialogue. That's it.
That's crazy.
Right? So
He uses different literary techniques as a literary technique. The like different literary techniques like consonants and repetition of different sounds
well, yeah.
for
Well,
onomatopoeia.
yeah, I would say that that's like the height of poetry, when every single word is meant to feel as the thing that it defines, the same as the thing that it defines. And so, like, as a singer, in my creative process, I find that, I'm mostly catching inspiration. There are times where I can sit down and I can write a song, and then there's other times where a song just pours out of me, lyrics and melody. And there are times where I've literally written down lyrics and thought to myself, well, what do these sound like? And that's always the creative question. It's like, what am I dealing with? What am I trying to articulate, and how does this sound? And then ultimately it becomes, for me, a collaborative process with, the horns, the drums, the keys, any other percussion, in the studio, the way things get mixed and balanced, that produces the final product. But when I'm alone by myself and I'm literally scratching at the surface of what the song is going to be, sometimes it pours out. Generally, a song will pour out of me when I'm overcome with an experience.
Yeah.
And it's almost like my subconscious soothing me, and it's a song, and it feels very, very personal. But I step back from it, sometimes for a month or two or a day, and I can see, like, okay, this isn't just about me getting up and sharing my story. This is something that relates to other people. This is something that isn't just an experience that I've gone through. This is something that everyone experiences in the course of their lives, or can relate to in some way. And the beauty of language is that no matter what I say, it's going to be heard differently by different people depending on their relationship to those words.
Right.
So there's a part of the process that I think as a creative we have to accept is not within our control. And that's the release. That's the giving it away so that other people can make it their own. I mean, jazz is a great example of that, because you have all of these standards that there are so many different versions of, because Jitterbug Waltz, there's Art Tatum, there's Errol Garner, there's Bill Evans, there's Vince Guaraldi, there's Cecile McLaurin Salvant, there's a younger generation, Emmett Cohen. Everybody does their own version of Jitterbug Waltz because it is a great, great song. And everyone has this different, beautiful relationship to it. And we're not restructuring the song itself. We're hearing where there's different possibilities for harmonies. We're hearing it at different tempos. We're hearing it with different instrumentation, pared down, more lush, and it's going to communicate something different every time. And for those of us who know the song, when we step into it, we're going to be like, oh, wow. I'm not just coming at this fresh. I'm coming at this with a whole season of memories of hearing it different ways.
Wow. So, okay, I want to get back to that line of questioning, because you're putting me on this thought process of the perfectionist in you with the lyrical crafting, the melody crafting, right? Like you build a base with your emotion and then you constantly tweak it.
Mm.
But then there's the release of the giving it away and understanding that it will land with some people. It won't land with some people, but people will get catharsis of it. So how do you draw the line, right? Because where I wanted this line of questioning from, like, I guess 20 minutes ago to go was like, when you're getting into this field and you're choosing to do this thing that's not certain, that, historically, the deck is stacked against you if you
Yeah.
choose to be a singer, right? And so you're choosing to do this thing. I'm sure it comes with a whole host of self-doubt and doubting your own ability, doubting your purpose, all of that, because you probably grow up in an environment, maybe, and I'm assuming here, you grow up in an environment where the value of singing practically, like pragmatically, is not there, or not enforced upon you, right? So that being in mind,
Yes, that's true.
Right. Okay. So sure. Right. So that being in mind, and being crafting lyrics, crafting melody, fitting them all together, knowing that your message will resonate with people, and knowing what message you're crafting in itself, when between that and between releasing the product, right? Where do you draw the line to release the product? Like, how do you let yourself go? Is it just like, how do you let the project go? Is it just that when I have the emotion out, I'm just doing quality control from that point, and if it hits a certain standard of quality, I'm okay to let it go? Or is it just like a fuck it, I got to release this now kind of thing? It'll
That's an
land.
interesting question because it's like, sometimes you gotta go before you're ready. Like it sounds like the question you're asking is really like, how do you know when the song is complete?
Sure.
How do
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know
yeah.
when the song is ready to be released? And I don't know that there's definitely no set of guidelines for me. I think there is this imaginative space in my mind where I can hear what the song sounds like in its completion, and there are times where I try to simply capture that imagination or shadows of it in the final product, and then there are times where I'm surprised by what goes on in the room, and my own imagination grows with regard to what the song can sound like. And I think for me, in order to maintain a sense of integrity, it's just a matter of like, I might be nervous to get up and sing it. I might be nervous to get up and sing something that I wrote because, oh my gosh, it is a vulnerable thing to do. But pushing, not pushing that aside, using that as an invitation for bravery, there has to still be a sense of, I'm proud of this. This is true. This is honest. And this, you know, isn't bad music. And,
Right.
I like Louis Armstrong's definition of music. It's like there's two kinds: good music and bad music. Good music you want to, get up and dance to, you want to move to, you want to engage with. Bad music you don't. And that is really it for me. I think, there's ways to make music way too complicated when it doesn't need to be. And then there's ways to make music so simple that it's just a mood. So for me, it has to engage me in an authentic way, and that's just not something that can be faked.
So your radar for creative taste.
I have
What?
a question.
Yeah.
This is awkward, but can we take like a 2 minute?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to cut it where you ended your thing, and then before I so radar, so I'm pressing pause right now.
Okay.
I'll take a minute too. I'll be right
Okay.
back.
Thanks.
And we're back.
I
Okay.
had to pee.
All right. Well, there it is. I did that as well. So, talking about when a song is ready to release, right? There's a whole host of considerations that go in, and uh, technical discretion and all of that.
For
But
sure. None
yeah,
of that counts for anything though until you in your bones feel like, yeah, the song's done. Like you can get lost in the weeds of like adding drum fills,
yeah.
adding harmonies, fixing the balance, fixing the mix, but I think it's hard to. I mean, even when you're at that stage, the engineering phase, that's its whole ball game.
Right.
But for me, I'm not an engineer. I'd love to learn more about music production. I think more women need to be music producers. Ladies, learn how to do it. But
we
or like,
barely have
gentlemen,
we
get the
barely
fuck
have
out of
it.
the way
Yeah.
and let the women produce. Slash women just take
But
charge.
if women are producing, then how can they find these 17-year-old potheads from England to produce? You know, all right,
You lost
I'm
me
throwing
there.
shades. I'm throwing shades. Okay, never mind. Forget that. Forget that.
But yeah, so before you even get to the studio, there's that like, okay, am I done writing this? And for me, that's a very it's a very personal sense, and the only thing I can offer to any other songwriters out there is that it feels like I said earlier, it just feels like it's telling the truth, and it's not like so whiny and specifically about me. I'm not naming or shaming anyone. like I did that in my journal, but it's yeah, but it's pages are ripped, but it's
And
just
the burn book.
yeah, the burn book. Yeah. Yeah. It's anger journaling is good. Anger, I like what Tara Brock says about anger, that it's something that gets you started. It's not where you stay. So I think of songwriting in the same way. The emotion is what gets you started. It's not necessarily just where you stay. It's what you give
Yeah.
away, what you communicate. And there just needs to be a moment where you're very honest with yourself. And that's a practice in and of itself. It's for me an ongoing practice of learning when something is ready to go into the studio, and then when you're in the studio, when it sounds good and it's done. It's the same with any other art craft. Ceramics is a great example because you can only stay at the wheel so long. The clay gets too wet or too dry and you can't work with it anymore.
Timing is everything.
Timing is everything. So it's a fine balance, and I think that's something that everyone has to open themselves up to feel on their own, and just practice, like listening back to the material, giving it some space, coming back to it later. Because the thing that gets in the way of this process, which is simple and not easy, is our own judgment. And
Yeah.
so there's a certain amount of healing that has to go on, and a certain amount of space you physically need from what something sounds like. You got to give your ears a little bit of a break and then come back.
That's actually where I wanted this line of questioning to go that we
Ah,
started, I guess, at the beginning of this episode. Was I want to get to like the spectrum of confidence, right?
mm,
So I made these assumptions earlier, right? You're told you're either you're told you can't do this or you tell yourself you can't do this, right? There's a lot working against you to choose to go into singing, and choosing not necessarily to be a singer, but to be a songwriter and content creator, right? So there's a lot that goes in there. There's a lot of self doubt to overcome, and there's a lot of that self doubt to overcome to get to the release of the product. But now let's flip it, and let's say you are prolific and you release a lot of product, right? And everyone is like, "Oh, that's great. That's great." Really, you and then the people in your immediate environment who are very technically savvy in music will know your mistakes or where you don't like your product or whatever. But everyone, the general population around you is like, "Oh, this is great. This is great. You are incredible. You blah blah blah." You take that. Now, humans in general will take praise like that and instill a confidence, right? That's the kind of confidence that could keep you moving. Now, the fine line between that confidence being false confidence or substantive is what I like, kind of what I want to get to.
mm.
So, right. So and I don't know, this is probably a pattern you see not just with singers, but like huge public personas and everything. You see in the beginning of their careers, everything is more substantive, right? It comes from emotional places and all of that stuff, right? There's a lot that goes into coding the metaphors that
And
they craft.
capitalism gets involved.
Yeah, capitalism gets involved, but maybe on a more primal level, what gets involved is that hacking of the ego, right? So it's like if all your stuff comes from this emotional place, right? It really resonates with a lot of people, and then you get very popular, and then everything you do is popular. Then it's like the next thing that comes out, right? You're following
Oh, there's the
metrics,
pressure to succeed again.
right? The pressure to succeed again.
Also, the pressure to succeed a first time. So,
But that pressure to succeed again, how
yeah.
much of that is really internal? Or is that like, yo, I'm the shit. I put out this thing that everyone fucks with. And now, no one's giving me any criticism. I'm just going to put out another one. And it's like, I know that kind of mentality
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
probably comes from how people are raised, like the different viewpoints. It's like, okay, well, no, I got to put out something incredible to top. I got to hit lightning in a bottle
But
twice.
all of those things that we're talking about right now are um, external. So I want to speak to
Mm,
the examples of people who I think have managed success very well,
okay.
and the way that I hope to manage it, and the way that I've had to develop confidence. Because believe me, like it is a work in progress. Like for me to think of myself as worthy is really the hurdle that I'm the thing that I'm walking through right now, and I'm doing all the meditation and the praying and the like talking to a counselor every once in a while because I think it's so important. And it's important for the sustainability of a person's career too. And for me, it's about having an inner sense of self-worth. It's not about for me worrying about whether or not I'm good. I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful that I was born feeling if I gave myself a chance, yes, I will be good and I will share that with people. And if I don't give myself a chance, it's because I feel I'm not worthy because of, the social perception of who I am, or because I grew up in a certain kind of neighborhood, or because if I become successful and I achieve the things I want, then who am I leaving behind, or who am I disappointing, or what is my family going to think if I say how I really feel. I think all of those questions get in the way of a person who might want to do something, even maybe someone who feels that they're good, uh, going out and doing that thing or practicing on it on a daily basis. The way it manifests for me is like I have had all the jobs, sometimes all the jobs at once, and I will work so hard, giving my energy away to these things that I don't care about as much, and I'll feel depleted at the end of the day. I used to work at this nice restaurant in the West Village, and it was like perfectly fine. I'd go in, I'd host, I'd take people to their table. Harvey Weinstein ate there once, and I was like, "You're gross. Your wife is gorgeous. Why? How? Ugh." And I came home and I like sat down on my bed, took a breath, and that one breath, I was just like, clack, 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 clack. Tears were coming down. And I realized that like there's a leap of faith involved in choosing to be an artist. It's not just I went to school for this and I've got degrees after my name. Those are all external. I need to have the confidence to say I'm going to dedicate my time to this because that is my currency.
Yeah.
I don't have like, I'm launching a Patreon soon, look out for it. Like my currency right now is how do I choose to spend my time? What efforts am I choosing to further? And how can I use that time wisely? Inspiration strikes and I might be, serving someone their coffee. How can I take advantage of that moment? And I think the confidence grows when we are able to live in a way that's more in line with that strike of inspiration, that we can honor that instinct in ourselves that says, do this. This is what you were meant to do. And there will be a lot of outside forces telling you that you can't and that you shouldn't do it. And there might even be a feeling coming from within you of I'm not worthy of the success that I want, or of putting out this product or standing on this stage, you know. And I have to remind myself that I'm just a girl, not trying to like quote Notting Hill here, but like I'm a person. I'm just a person. And I therefore am no less worthy than any other person.
Right.
And I wouldn't tell a stranger on the street that they figured something out too late in life, or that they didn't get it right so many times that now they should just stop trying. I wouldn't do that.
And the people that tell you that are also just persons, and nothing makes them more worthy.
And why do I have to give them my power? So it's a lot of having that kind of conversation with myself and knowing at the end of the day, I've experienced what it is to try to be happy doing something else. And I'm not.
I have a friend that told me this thing once, and he's like this famous director, and his name's Love. Also, he's my only other friend in India. Um, but he told me once that like this was like we were on the set of his movie. It was like his second movie, and so he was just like in this space of getting all of this like buzz, and the actors he was working with just became famous in India because it's Bollywood and people are insane over there. And but he was in this really peculiar place, and I was telling him about these things I'm trying to do, and how it's very not traditional. And he was telling me he gave me this gem that was like really good about like how the more people that tell you not to do something or that it's not secure, it's you should thank them, because they're not just telling you. That means that there are more for every one of you that's doing something, right?
Oh,
10
interesting.
people, there's 10 people telling you not to do it. you step back, transitive property, right? So for every one person that's trying to do something, there's 10 people saying not to. That means that there are way more people telling those one person groups not to do something. And the likelihood of that working is going to be higher. And so those people won't do something. So now this guy is telling me he's a big Bollywood director now, but at that point he was breaking in and trying to get relevance and everything. So he's telling me that the thing that keeps him going is knowing the fact that all of those people discourage people that come up and do the art and everything. And what that functionally does is decreases his competitive playing field. So he can shine and he can do incredible things, which he has. And it's just like that kind of thing that he told me that like 9 years ago. And I've been trying to internalize that and all that stuff. But like that's something I always come back to and think about because it's like, yo, you see so many people shitting on anything you do creatively, right? They'll tell you it's great to your face, but they'll shit on it. But it's like because there's a whole market for criticism, you know? When you criticize something, you are holding yourself in this position to have the authority to have a judgment, right? And really what you're holding on to is that ability to have the authority, right? And so it's like, what does that actually serve? Nothing. It just serves as a deterrent.
Yeah, I think that people find security in different ways, and we don't live in a world where, if we go back to like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that you can easily find shelter and a secure source of food
Yeah.
um, through being an artist, and those are very real things. But I've had to like literally learn time and time again to sort of detach myself from other people's opinion. The greatest analogy I can come up with is like I do this gig sometimes at Hotel Chantel. Dandy Wellington, amazing jazz singer, super, super sweet human being, will be like, Katherine, I can't do this gig. Will you do it? And it's 5 hours. It's like a ring cycle of jazz. It's like operatic. I'm singing for hours. The brunch is amazing. The people are very interesting. It's like it's all of the city coming through. And it gets loud. It gets loud. There's sometimes this glass thing that they pull up overhead, and it's me, bass, a horn, drums, and I've got my microphone, and I can't sing to the whole venue. I got to sing to the people who can hear. And then the people who are curious, the number of people who are curious to hear what's going on rises, because I'm not trying to reach them. I'm doing something authentic, and authenticity attracts attention. And it's going to fall on some people and it's not going to reach other people, but more people are going to be curious if they see heads turned, wondering what's going on with the girl doing some sort of emotional thing over in the corner. They're not going to respond to me being like singing at the top of my lungs, and my lungs can't do that. Like there's this Instagram account called They Have the Range. I don't. You know what I mean? Like I use what I've got to my, to the best of my ability. I'm not out here like,
Is that a thing you
belting.
can? Has a ship sailed on that? Can you achieve that? Can you train that?
Oh yeah, for sure you can. I don't think the ship has sailed for me.
Okay.
Um, I don't think it's sailed for me. There's certain things I'd like to be able to do with my voice, and I'm never going to stop, you know, training and supporting to be able to lean into that direction. But that's just a personal philosophy. Whether or not I'll achieve it, time will tell. But I'm certainly having fun along the way, working on my belt. I grew up
Right.
in
Can you hit the Mariah Carey notes?
The girl equivalent of a falsetto. Sure, yeah, I can.
I have no
Um,
idea. I don't,
yeah, but
you just put
no one
technical
wants to
terms
hear
on something I don't know about.
that. But yeah, I think that that's the best way to think about it. Like if I were so concerned, and we're going to talk about this, I know, in a little bit, but so concerned about how other people saw me, and I still held it in my heart, as a block from moving forward with my dreams. And sometimes it is tough. It feels burdensome, the weight of knowing that I don't fit into any particular box, or I might be disappointing someone by coming out with a certain truth. It is burdensome. I don't mean to diminish that. But if I were to try to be who everyone saw me and thought that I should be, or to try to sound in a way that was pleasing to everyone, I would be an apostrophe of a person. I think that, you know, Game of Thrones is a great teacher in the power of confidence. The person who you expect to die first ends up being, the king's right hand. You have to have some level of, um, I would say, faith, just because when you're building something, everything you're talking about is ahead of you. Especially for me right now in my career, like I'm getting ready to release a lot of music. I have to have enough trust in myself. I have to think the song sounds good. If I think it sounds good, I'm pretty sure someone else is going to think it sounds good too. It has to make me want to move. It has to make some of the people I'm closest to want to move too. Um, and then I've got to give it away with confidence. And Dave Chappelle talks about this a lot. He's a great comedian, and he's being interviewed by Letterman talking about, like, yeah, we're in an industry where your success is based upon people liking you, but you can't always serve that God. You can't always try to be who they want you to be. You have to be who you are. And I think that that is the way that conversations change.
Do you think that this is a transition that happens with age? I feel like, okay, now I'm just
No.
gonna impute a pattern onto you, which I doubt. It's another assumption, right? But I
Okay.
feel like with a lot of performers, beginning of the career is, you got to imitate somebody you idolize or whatever. You got to go towards what is the instant feedback. You got to cater to that. But I feel like later on, or maybe it's like people around their 30s start to thinking start to actually think about developing their own voice or their own identity, right? There's not so much identity forging in the 20s as there is of like observance of data, collecting of data of different things. So it's like, I don't know if that necessarily translates into if your creative ambitions are to emulate or if they are to create, like, have your own unique voice. I mean, I'm sure your ambitions are always to have your own unique voice, but when do you start the work on that, realizing that you don't have your own unique styling and that you got to develop it, that you are an apostrophe of a person until
Oh,
your
I
own
would
voice?
say, to speak to the larger, like, creative arch of an artist, I do think that maybe at the beginning of your life you're taking in information, and then the rate at which that information turns into something that's very personal and unique versus something that is, a playback of what you've heard, a refining of the ability to create something unique. That happens for everyone at a different pace. Like Mozart wrote Twinkle Twinkle Little Star when he was 5. You've got cats out there like Joey Alexander on piano, who's like a brilliant pianist. He sounds like Monk, but he also sounds like himself. He's got a sense of humor on the keys. And then you have, like, in the pop world, I would say, like, Billie Eilish. She really does not, like, to me, she's like such a great example of someone who, like, makes what she wants to make. I didn't like, I felt like who I was inside was a big rebellion of who I portrayed myself to be for a long time. That
Wow.
I grew up in a Jamaican family, and I was the rude gal. I was like the dramatic one. I was always speaking my mind too much. I didn't know my place, and now I'm so grateful for that. I remember hearing, like, why can't you be a nice quiet girl? And and I always felt like I wanted to be who they wanted me to be, because that was how I got love. That's how I got acceptance. And I wasn't going to get acceptance because I'm just not that person. And now I realize, no, there is a crowd for me there, and my instincts and the way that I am matter. And I definitely came into jazz, about 8 years ago.
Yeah.
Before that, I was, studying acting, and
Was that when you made the decision to come into jazz 8 years ago, or that's when you got into it?
that's when I got into it. I think the decision to pave my way forward came not too long after. It's like Jazz is jazz is incredible. It's incredibly fun. I remember my first gig when they paid me, I was like, I feel like I just got away with highway robbery. I actually don't even know what highway robbery would be. Like, what am I robbing? Like a
I
cone?
think it just I think
A traffic like a
the idiom implies that it is very risky, and you getting away with it is a much bigger win than getting away
yeah.
with like armed
Yeah,
robbery.
but I just want to think about it on a technical level for a second. Like, did I steal someone's license plate real fast? Like, ha!
I think it's like that. I think it's like that Italian job type stuff, or like Fast and Furious stuff is highway robbery. So when
Yeah,
you
yeah.
drive
You
the
robbed
car
something and you
underneath,
got on the highway.
yeah, you got to get someone pop
Sure.
out of the sunroof to cut a hole underneath the 18
Right.
wheeler to go. That's highway robbery.
That
So
okay.
you got away with that.
Yeah, it felt
Catherine
great.
Zeta-Jones and entrapment.
Yeah, 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 yeah. She's Catherine with a C. No hate, no shade. Love you, Catherine.
No, right,
Uh,
exactly. No shade. She's very lily white. Catherine with a C.
amazing though. Great actress.
That was a
But yeah, I would say that I'll speak to my own experience. I am figuring out. I remember, like I'd start off and I'd be like, okay, let me learn all of, you know, let me learn Louis Armstrong's trumpet solo. And believe me, even if I sing Louis Armstrong's trumpet solo, I'm not going to sound like Louis Armstrong. I'm not going to phrase it the exact same way that he did. I'll try, but it's not going to be exactly the same. And I think there is a way to kind of learn your own voice by learning what other greats have done before you. And then stepping away from it, and suddenly you're creating something that is true for you,
yeah.
that is super unique. It's about learning language, and for me, that the bravery and the willingness to be my outspoken self, to say fuck on a recording of a podcast, I'm already actually a little worried that my younger cousins are going to hear this and be like, I can't believe she did that.
Well, our average,
But
if it helps, our average view duration is about 6 minutes, and we're well past 6 minutes into this interview. So,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Trust my family will watch the whole thing and I'll hear about it. But but my willingness to go beyond the confines of who I thought I had to be. I mean, the pandemic was a great vehicle for that too, because we have all this time. We have to confront
yeah,
who we really are, and the demons in me of feeling like I'm not worthy of love, that I'm not worthy of a family, that I'm kind of just outcast. I had to leave where I was staying in Brooklyn because I lived with 7 other people. And I was just like, what am I doing? I'm 33 years old and I don't have safe haven during a national emergency, a public health emergency, a global emergency. And all of the self-criticism that comes in, then eventually you realize okay, but I had someone who cared about me enough to say, come stay with me. I had food that I could provide for not just myself, but for someone else. I wouldn't criticize somebody who had no home. I would feel for them, and I'd, carry some change in my pocket so that I can give to people when I pass them on the street. It's not much, but it's what I can do. Um, there was a moment where things began to break, and my sadness began to give way to a greater sense of purpose that never went away. But we each have to give ourselves the permission to be rooted in who we really are, and know that that is a great act of self-love. That is a great act of rebellion, especially in this country, especially if you're a person of color, queer, don't fit inside the structure for success that this country caters to. If you can choose to do the thing that gives you joy in a meaningful way, then that's huge. You've won. And I do believe that hopefully the rest of your community will conspire to help you.
damn, yeah, yeah. I think, yeah, all this time we've had this isolation, the pandemic, you know, taking account of what your blessings are and not your shortcomings, all of that. I noticed that, with me and with a lot of people that look like me, family and friends or whatever, not look like me, but
Brown.
ethnic. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Um, we had time not only to think about the present, but a lot of time to reassess the past. And I feel like a lot of people were thinking about different memories and moments that they had in which, they're like, yo, that was kind of messed up that that happened to me like that, or that this person really said this thing, because we did, like, I feel like in our general lives, we're moving, we don't get time to really decompress and stuff. So it's like now it's like all of that came in. But really, what I'm doing is I'm trying to transition into our segment called
Mhm.
tokenized or fetishized. And so I
I'll
told you
break
about
up.
this.
I'll break down the two definitions for you as I'm going to use them. So for
Wonderful. So, right. So I need an anecdote from you as to where you were either tokenized or fetishized.
mm,
And like you said, what the two mean, and if there really is a dichotomy between those two, or if I'm just saying that, right? If I'm just framing it like that, right? They could be intermixed, they could whatever,
I'd
or
say there's a
maybe
Venn diagram at which they overlap, and the overlap place between tokenizing and fetishizing is othering. When
okay.
you make me not human like you don't. You're not really trying to get to know me, but qualities of who I am seem to make me something other than a person who feels in the same way as any other person feels, who feels pain, who laughs, who cries, who, I hate the phrase like, oh, um, somebody like feel being like so prone to pain like a little white girl. It's like, you know what, everyone fucking feels pain, and women actually have a higher tolerance than men, so back off. Like, I am just as delicate as your precious little white girl lead. Like, it annoys the hell out of me. So othering is where tokenizing and fetishizing other overlap. Tokenizing is generally for the public.
Okay.
I have gotten hired at organizations and been asked to be on the diversity board. And meanwhile, I'm like the only person of color. I'm being tokenized. I'm being used to represent and whitewash the rest of the organization, all of whose decision makers are white. I'm the token that they can point to and say, look, see, there's diversity, there's exceptionalism. Anyone who ever has been, yelled at and like, oh, you only got in here because of affirmative action, you were tokenized. Affirmative action is a great setup for tokenization. It doesn't change who the leadership in a company is. It doesn't change who the decision makers are. It doesn't change the systemic racism within education that makes it harder for poor communities and
Are
communities of
you
color to get an education and get into these universities. It just says, okay, these exceptional few can come in, therefore we're a diverse university.
so you're being tokenized on the admission part, or are you
All
being
of it.
tokenized on the how you're perceived and treated part?
I would say the tokenizing is the verb of being selected to represent diversity. Meanwhile, the decision makers are white, and it's a ruse. It's a ruse to say, look, we've got this brown person. We're a diverse community. We don't need to do any more work. That's tokenizing.
Okay, but from now, I'm not saying I disagree or not, but from an institutional standpoint, right?
Yeah.
From a functional standpoint, if you have like all these legacy children, right? You've got these recruiters, you've got people that play these games to get admission, then from an affirmative action functional standpoint, would it necessarily be so much as a we need a diversity quota, or we need to counteract the potential homogeneity that we may indoctrinate in these kids by having
Well,
diversity?
I think that that's what affirmative action was attempting to resolve, but
Okay.
it didn't really resolve it because the people are still othering the brown kid. They're like, oh, well, there's a law in place that forces us to do this. They're not changing their core values, which
Yeah.
would therefore change the way that their admissions class looked. They're selecting based on the same inherent biases and preferences that they already have, and the law is forcing their hand and saying, look, this black person has the same grades as this white kid. You have to fucking take the black kid, otherwise, the police are going to show up. And it's a very it's is a hugely double-edged sword, because it then is detrimental to the black community, because it's like, oh, well, of course you can pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Look, these like four people
While
did it.
you're systematically being denied representation,
Absolutely. And while
opportunity.
you're systematically being denied a safe and robust education.
Right.
So it's like a band-aid over a gaping wound.
And what I take issue with a lot is like okay, so I went to law school in Arkansas, and I was like one of the one brown people there. So uh, but so I got a lot of pushback. It's like, oh, you were hired by affirmative action, but what's your LSAT score? And then I'd say my LSAT score, which was higher than the average LSAT score, and it'd be like, oh, well, maybe you're just accepted because of your LSAT score, but really,
Well, I think it's
it's not a
unfair.
right. Of course, it's unfair.
It's
Right,
unfair that they would say to you. To me, that's just
right,
racism. When your peers look at you and you're like,
yeah,
you're just here because of affirmative action. That's like a white person being sore that they didn't get where they wanted to go because, why didn't privilege work in their favor all the time?
right.
Or like,
And I mean, this
why are
is
you in this space is really the question.
right. This is Arkansas, where like my peers are coming from very rural white communities, and so I'm like the only ethnic. So whatever. That's what that is.
It
But
feeds into the myth that a lot of, I think, poor white Trump supporters supported him in favor of because they're like, well, we see people of color taking our jobs.
yeah,
So again, it's not a system it's not change where it counts. It's change at the very last minute. It's change at the end, and it really set you up and me. Like I had moments of that too when I was in elementary school, not so much in art school or college, but definitely when I was younger and I was the only black girl, only brown girl. And kids were like, "Oh, you're very clearly here because you're here on scholarship and you're here,
right.
because of
And
affirmative."
that framework that they push, like it's this weird by like this weird framework
Oh, that's meant to
where
make
it's
you feel
like
like you don't
right.
deserve to be
Right,
there.
right. No, it's like, well, it's affirmative action is a trade-off with merit, right? They try to frame an affirmative action hire or admission as coming in with a lack of merit, right? Where it's
Mhm.
like, yo, okay, Brian, but what are your metrics for what merit is?
Right.
Like if it's just the numbers, okay, the numbers are the same. Now let's look at the adversity, right? No, there's a huge structural disadvantage there. So do you think that this person has more merit by having more opportunities and privilege for those opportunities? Or does a person have more merit by being denied those opportunities and being as qualified on paper in spite, right? But that's never the consideration, right? The structural disadvantages and overcoming those are never the consideration for when they try to frame the distinction between two candidates,
Yeah.
right? And it's like, well, why is a white candidate always the one with more merit, right? Because that comes from this deeply ingrained preconception of supremacy.
Yeah, and I think also an idea of ownership. And when I spoke earlier about like I would be an apostrophe of a person, I think part of it is that imposter syndrome
Mhm.
that when you are the affirmative action pick, you can very quickly develop because oh, I don't want to offend anyone. I want to be loved. I want to be accepted. But the things that I have to do to be accepted take me further and further from who I am or any understanding of who I am. Um, all of the things that I would have to do to be accepted require me to believe that I'm just a visitor here and I have to be polite and I have to take second place and I have to be the best friend and I have to be the one whose shoulder you can cry on, but not the one who can cry. I have to believe that I can listen to your problems and watch you get outraged and let you yell at me, but I cannot raise my voice to say, don't touch my hair because I would be perceived as aggressive. And so it becomes very difficult to feel like you have a place when you're being granted an access ticket and
Mhm.
being told that it's the color of your skin why you're here
Right.
and you took an opportunity away from some white person who deserves to be here. That's really the running narrative. And so I think that definitely impacted me on a creative level. And I think one of the things I want to make sure to leave and offer any other artists watching is like, it's not your fault. It's okay that you feel that way. And this is why loving yourself is an act of serious celebration and joy and rebellion. And the same systems that worked to make other people successful, the same principles apply to you. You can be successful if you put yourself out there, you put your work out there and get the people around you who are more than qualified to help you get where you want to go.
Yeah, because you have to if every struggle in the world is a form of collective bargaining or negotiation for a finite amount of resources, then you have to build your team up. One analogy I like to use with my friends and we think about like the difference of quality of life, and yeah, and not being given the space to be emotional or being seen as an emotional person, because if
Mm.
you're otherized, your humanity is stripped, right? We're all Bagger Vance, you know, that's the role we have to play, either Bagger Vance or, you know, subhuman, right? Either parahuman or subhuman, right? So that being in mind, when like when we have to, you know, defer our space constantly, right? Have the analogy I like is that we're all at Disney World, but we're the custodial staff,
Mhm.
you know? And some people have fast passes, but some people are the ones wearing the red hats and in the mobility scooters and are still marginalized. But you know, we even if we aren't the custodial staff, we'll get asked where the bathroom is, you know, or it's like, how long does this ride run? It's like, I don't work here. But you know, I'm here trying to enjoy Disney World, but it's not Disney World for me. You know, this is me having to field all these questions that people feel entitled to ask me because I look like the custodial staff.
You know, I've just started challenging it back in a way that feels true for me.
Yeah, what do you do?
Okay, so I'm house sitting in a very fancy building in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Um, Went through a breakup. What? Lonely Hearts Club. Where you at? Started
Mhm.
dating someone new. It's tight.
There you go.
Yeah, yeah. But so I'm like one of, I don't know, 10 people of color in this building, maybe less. And I'm counting children because there's like a family of four, and I think the grandparents come
And
by
you're
sometimes.
counting nannies.
Me, yeah. And there's like one elderly gentleman,
Yeah.
but like certainly no one else in their like early 30s, like with keys to an apartment. And like this used to be two apartments. Like I'm in Fraser's house. So I have a key to everything in this building, the mailbox, well, everything I need access to, like the mailbox and my front door. I don't have a key when the doorman is away to the building door. So there have been evenings where I'm outside and I'm waiting for the doorman to come in, and a resident will come up. And most recently it was this like older white lady. And I just was super nice to her. I was like, "Hi, I'm staying in, so and so's apartment, and would you I'm carrying a bag of groceries." And I'm like, and she's like, "Well, as long as you're not coming in to rob the place, you don't look like you're here to commit a burglary. I just don't want to let anyone in who I shouldn't let in, who doesn't live here, and you don't live here, you're just staying here." And I was like, "Yeah, do I need to make you more comfortable? Here are the keys to the place here are the keys to the door. You know,
Dude,
are you is there anything, am I being aggressive? Is there something that I'm doing to make you uncomfortable?" Like there are just subtle cracks of
right.
questions that I've become less afraid to ask, to sort of take up the space in
Right.
the room that is mine.
That is yours, right?
Yeah.
I had a my one moment like that was the last time I flew. It was going to New York, back to Mississippi, right? But it was in New York that like it was in the security line. After we went through security, did the whole thing, and then picking up our belongings off the conveyor belt. There's this white woman that was behind me, but went ahead of me during the security thing. So she was waiting longer than I was for the belt stuff because mine came out first, right? And she was just waiting there, standing in front of my stuff. And so I go to get my stuff, and her phone comes in right after, and I'm just getting my stuff, and she's like not moving in front of me while I'm getting my stuff. And then I get my stuff, I put it away, and she's like, "Thank you so much for not stealing my phone." And I was like, I was like, "Why would I steal your phone?" And I felt so proud of myself to be able to like stand there and just look at her and be like, "Why would I steal your phone?" And it was like, well, you know, like these things, I mean, these things happen, you know, like you have to be careful.
Man, it happens in the theater too. I was recently doing like a Zoom play, and the director, she apologized for it afterward, but I picked a background. I was supposed to be at a bar, and I picked this like swanky beautiful like background. I think it looked like I was in like an ice cave, and I'm playing an international spy, so I'm like, yeah, she would be at a bar made out of
Right.
ice.
Sure. That's
And
so
she was
normal.
like, "Can you pick something a little more urban?" And I was like, what do you mean by urban? And she was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. No, I didn't mean that. I just meant like
Didn't
city,
mean what?
like a New York city, urban, not like, okay, thank you for clarifying. And I do think that she genuinely just misspoke. Like, I don't know where in the world she's from. I think she just misspoke, but it was annoying, and it was enough for me to be like,
okay, here's the thing.
come correct.
Last 4 years of bullshit. Okay? No more benefit of the doubt extended to coded language. That is you.
No, call it out. Kindly call it out.
We can't say, or we can't give it the space to be unintentional. Right? The people that say these things are grown adults, right? That are responsible for all of their language. Language is precision. If you choose to use certain words and you don't necessarily understand the depth of them, you can no longer be extended the mercy of not understanding the depth of those words. You will be held accountable to the standard of being an adult that understands what you're doing.
Yeah, I would even say that it is an act of mercy to say, like
literally the thing
what
you
did
just
you
did
mean?
2 minutes ago. Literally the
Yeah,
thing you just did 2 minutes ago. It's like, I don't think she meant it, but
no, but I still confronted her about it. Like, I
right,
think
right.
the merciful act was me not just resting in the space of, I don't think she meant it that way. It was like me being like, listen, I don't know what you meant. Can you tell me?
Right.
Okay. And now that you've told me, are we both clear on why that was not an okay thing for you to say? You know, to me, the only Black girl in the cast, like, come on.
Right. But I'm saying, like, now it's, yo, you intentionally said that to me. I can't believe that you didn't intentionally say that to me. Unless you put forth a very convincing case as to why it was unintentional, as opposed to me having to bear this burden of persuasion that it was intentional. Right? I can't be convincing you that what you did to me was intentional and also extend you the benefit of the doubt that it was unintentional and make my case harder to do, right? Because then that's just an implicit form of gaslighting on myself.
Right. I guess I'm still at the point where I think it's enough of a challenge for me to let someone know that I see what they're doing. Do they see it?
Yeah,
because I think that there's a lot of learned behavior that
we have to unlearn.
You know, exactly. And it's not just, you know, in Black communities and brown communities, it's largely in white communities because, like, you know, I dated somebody who grew up in a mostly white community and didn't understand that his one Black friend definitely experienced racism in high school. He was like, oh, I don't think I'm going to change his name. I don't think Gary experienced racism in fucking whatever. I'm going to say the state, Connecticut. Yes, he did.
Connecticut.
Yeah, I was like, I think you'd have to ask him.
He did not experience any racism right after we get out of him. So
right, exactly. Right. I was like, he's like, well, I never heard anyone say the N-word to him, and I was like, I think it's deeper than
that's because you did, homie.
Right. Like, did you ever have like a history class? Yeah, he experienced racism. Like, come on, talk to him about it. But yeah, I think that there's a lot of I think that there's a pressure within the white community, and this is how privilege is upheld, to not talk about racism because, you know, you'll be an outlier if you do, and people are gonna diminish your status because they just don't really want to hear about these uncomfortable subjects because we're not racist.
And it's a way to
breaking that down. It's not my job, it's their job. But I feel that when I encounter it, I have the opportunity to just poke holes in that understanding and say, like, what do you mean?
Right.
Very pointedly.
And it's like, okay, to have an argument, to have a constructive discourse, there needs to be a shared assumption of beliefs, of facts, right? So the disconnect, and I'm seeing this a lot. I think I'm going to air this episode tomorrow. We have one stacked that I'll just do next week because this is right after the election results. They're still being very contested. And so there's a lot of like fallout. The disconnect I'm seeing is a lot of people are saying now in an effort to minimize anybody that has any sort of like political discourse. It's like, oh yeah, Biden, whatever, great. But people, in order to minimize, are like, oh, well, you just call all white people racists. That's all you do, is you just call all white people Nazis, right? Because it's like we're going under the shared assumption that anything I do absent of full on direct violence, hate crime, means that I can't be a racist, that you calling me a racist is futile, right? And so I'm just going to assume that you, brown person, also assume that, oh, just playing the race
Oh
card, there's
yeah, that
nothing there.
totally is the flip of it, which is
Right,
just
that's
like,
the flip
oh,
of it.
you have this victim mentality.
Right, and so
I had a crazy job interview over the pandemic with this woman who was like, well, I doubt you've ever really experienced racism. I mean, like, I wasn't even really sure you were black. I mean, look at you. You're like
oh, thank
also
goodness you're not.
like very beautiful and well spoken. So you and I was like, excuse me?
Yeah, I was so
I don't
relieved when I
remember.
thought you weren't black.
I literally was like, excuse me? You know, and I like gave her a history lesson. I was like, I was lucky enough to go to schools where I was able to receive an education. I had a single mom who worked very hard to make sure of that. You know, I am absolutely a black woman, and that you would look at me and try to make a decision about my identity is batshit. And the way that you're speaking to me right now is extremely rude. And the assumptions that you're making about my experience because you happen to think that I'm well spoken and well dressed are really offensive. You know, they're really offensive, you know, and
I can't help but think
I
about
walked out.
people.
I
Yeah,
left.
I can't help but think about people I'm related to that look like the people that you're imagining in your head. You know,
Right. Right.
they are humans that I grew up with and empathize with. Yet you
Yeah.
are expecting me to so casually strip them of humanity so that I can agree with you. You know, and it's like this presumption that, oh, okay. Here's one thing I think about. Right, I'm sure you've been told this. Oh, you're just playing the race card. You've been told that before. Okay, yeah. By your reaction, I know you have. Okay, now let's think about that. What is the implication of saying someone is playing the race card?
Wow. I mean, that's a great question. That's a great question. That the problem that they're speaking to doesn't exist.
Well, yeah, but also it's a concession, right? I recognize. Okay, I'm going to say you, Catherine, are playing the race card. My name is Brian, and whatever.
It's a dismiss. It's dismissing the
Right.
substance of what I'm
So
saying.
you telling me something, and I'm going to say you're playing the race card.
And it's a very fucked up way of looking at racial dynamics and minimizing
Right.
that problem and saying that it doesn't exist.
Yeah,
No,
or
it's both of those things.
but I also concede. Functionally, I'm conceding that it exists, right? By saying that you're playing the race card, I am saying that yes, I'm conceding now that you are at a structural disadvantage and I am privileged. And you playing the race card is bringing this into our game of poker, that you are structurally disadvantaged, right? I am impliedly conceding the value of the race card. I'm not critiquing the race card and saying that it's not something that exists. As a matter of fact, I bring it into existence by saying you're playing it.
Yeah, that's true. But I think okay, so yes, and like
Okay.
yes, that's happening. Yes, I right. That's the person who says that is generally like a person who's structurally advantaged.
Right. So like one thing that I noticed with like the sitting in it and saying what I've always asked, what is a race card?
Right.
And I can never get back a positive response. It's always worked. I've never gotten a proper definition, because then that runs them through the thought process of like, oh shit, you, oh shit, yeah, you're right in what you're saying.
Now I'm
Right?
applauding the fact that you would ask the question, what is the race card?
What is a race card? Like, I think that should be the focus on all of these things. Is like when you and I have lived enough of a life to detect when we're about to be microaggressed against, or when something racial is about to happen to us, like different intonations in language, different words, different looks, crossing the street, different whatevers, right? We can detect it. So I think the paradigm shift should be where we ask them to define the parameters in which we agree upon, or in which they believe we agree upon, right? So go ahead,
I think
define
that
these terms.
I think that that would be so difficult for the person who's arrogant enough to say you're playing the race card because they're hiding behind their own comfort.
Right, and you use the Socratic method to have them implode upon themselves.
Right, absolutely. I think that is really such a dismissive statement and such a statement of I don't want to get into this, and
Mhm.
this is a bigger topic that we can really explore now. And it's also like victim shaming. It's also saying like you're playing this card because it's like going back to affirmative action. It's your access to equality when really you don't deserve to be equal. We're giving you an in.
Boom.
You know.
Right. It's, hey, I'm about to give up the game by accusing you of something.
Right, because you're not playing fair.
Yeah. And you're not playing fair by acknowledging that we've never played fair.
Right, exactly. Exactly. So I think that's how I'm going to respond to that. If I, if I come across that again, I feel like, the pandemic is a great way to you know, cull my circles. I
Yeah.
reach out to people who I really want to be in touch with, and I see people who I really want to see. So I feel fortunate that definitely
Same.
no one's going to say that to me for quite some time. Um,
And if they do, you're ready.
I'm so ready.
Oh my
Yeah.
God. You are ready. So I want to close this out with getting to something, like, so the election just happened, or the election just happened. The results are out.
Mm,
Kamala Harris, tell me how to say it, actually.
Kamala.
Kamala. Okay. Kamala Harris, first vice president who is of Jamaican and Indian descent, right? So, and you, not the same, but the same.
Right.
Like you have, why don't you
Jamaican.
tell us?
Yeah, no, I'm Jamaican and I have ancestry from South India. So Jamaicans are like the most mixed people on the world. I actually had to speak to a government lady on the phone today, and she looked at my application. She's like, "So you're black and white and Asian and Native American. What? Can you explain to me what's going on?" And I was like, "I'm Jamaican." She's like, "Oh, okay, honey, I got you. Me too." And she's like, she's like, I gotta take. She's like, I gotta take Native American off though, because on these forms they just mean the United States. They don't actually mean the continent of North America. And I was like,
Amerindian?
oh, yeah, because I would always assume that that Jamaica is part of North America, part of the Americas.
Yeah.
Definitely just from a geographic standpoint, but that's not what they were talking about. They use America to just mean the United States, which kind of weird, but I was like, no, 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 take that off then. Take that off because that's not me. Um,
I've
so
always
yeah,
wondered if I was a Pacific Islander.
oh my gosh.
What
You
is?
know what? People are people are people are people. I think it's beautiful. If someone looks at you and thinks that you're from where they are from, I take that as a big compliment.
I've noticed that on like job applications or whatever, all these different forms. Now, if you've noticed, it's like, are you Hispanic or not Hispanic? Like that's
Right.
a
And I'm
separate
like,
question. It's like, wait, why'd you ask me the previous question of what I was?
yeah, it's interesting. But anyway, so yeah, my heritage is Jamaican. We've got South India in there. We've got a lot of different countries. We've definitely got West Africa in there. Um, and my family is super excited to have that a woman like Kamala, first of all, a woman as vice president,
Mhm.
and the representation, and I have to say I am cautiously optimistic.
Right.
um I I appreciate what people who chose to vote in this election for Biden Harris were voting for. They were voting for what they knew. They wanted decency. They wanted the orange menace out of the White House. They
Right.
wanted um, someone who, isn't a white man in one of the highest positions, the highest offices in this country. They wanted, I think I already said decency. They wanted uh, a, a promise of unity. My hope is that we remain as committed to those ideals now that we have a president and vice president elect. Um, in Biden and Harris as we were before the election and before those results were confirmed. Because, the fact of the matter is, I am a bit more progressive and left leaning than Biden and Harris's track record proves. And I do hope that, you know, I would just say to all my Black and brown sisters out there, representation is amazing. It is amazing, and it is an important first step, but it is not the destination. And I will be very lovingly, you know, and love is not always gentle, but very lovingly holding these leaders accountable. And I will be holding myself accountable to taking action on a local level because, you know, Kamala billed herself as California's top cop. And her record as a prosecutor is a bit contentious. And I don't want to speak to all of the ways in which she could have done better. I was not in her shoes and she has come very far. And I believe that maybe now she has a better advantage to defund the police, or I mean, not that I don't know. Biden said that that's not something that's even on the table, but I believe that maybe now she has she's in a position to act more from where she wants to act than from where she feels she might need to in order to get elected. But I am nevertheless very hopeful, and I am going to be, you know, I hope I'm not being too vague here. I'm going to be a strong voice for the prison system reform, for educational equality, for healthcare equality, for the things that I think our country needs to change on a systemic level in order for there to be not just representation, you know, as a female vice president, but as Kamala said in her own speech, more women to come after her. Where are the brown people in the Senate? You know, where are the women in the Senate? I don't really, yeah, you know, like
the House, yeah,
right, where, you know, they're all in the House. I want to,
as a matter of fact, we voted to take one brown woman out of the Senate.
Like, I think the only one. So my hope is that, you know, the laws around police brutality need to change. The laws around prison sentencing and who can be held without, you know, on bail charges that they can't pay, that all of that needs to be changed. There shouldn't be any for-profit prisons. So our administration has a lot of work to do, and I'm going to be a strong, loving, loud supporter saying, let's get this done.
So, okay, so to address a couple of points, yes, there doesn't need to be a private prison thing. And actually, since the announcement that Trump lost, private prison stocks have actually been plummeting.
You're serious?
Yeah. So
wow.
that's one good indicator. Right. That's one good indicator.
Yeah.
A second thing is also, I think a big issue comes down to framing, right? We talked like before the episode, we talked about, you know, the Democrats and their strategy isn't so much to placate, you know, the Black and brown people that support them as it is so as not to alienate the, you know, conservatives that look like their uncles and nephews, right? And so there's that whole thing. But I think like the defund the police, right? That is an issue of framing in itself, right? Because Biden is saying things like, oh, we can't do that or whatever. But defunding the police is also the same as saying shifting resources to target violent crime and white collar crime. You know, it's like we're essentially shifting resources as opposed to defunding is one of those things that operates on a private primal level, again, to alienate those conservatives, of people that say things like, oh, you're just playing the race card. Right.
Yeah.
So
I read this amazing meme. It was like, we're not, it's not socialism, it's a tax break. Or something like that, but like to reframe it for, you know,
we need spin doctors.
Language is really important. Language is I just butchered that meme. I just butchered the meme, but we definitely need to think about how we communicate with different people who have different backgrounds, because the focus, I think, needs to shift from what party you're part of and what is the issue and how do we solve it.
Right. And one thing,
there's more than two parties in this country, but only two parties exist really on the ballot. And that's also a problem. So I think we need to not necessarily move toward the center, but move toward issues rather than politics.
Right. We have the paradigm we have for our discourse is adversarial, right? And I think we talked about this before the episode with the Kamala stuff, with when she was a top cop and a prosecutor. Our legal system is inherently designed, and they'll tell you this in law school, as adversarial, right? So the movements that she has to make as a prosecutor are different than the movements she'll have to make as a vice president,
and potentially a
ambassador.
tiebreaker in the
Right.
Senate. Yeah.
Exactly. A tiebreaker in the Senate, but being accountable to different people, right? The function of a public servant is to be the voice for their contingent, not necessarily everyone, but their contingent that elects them or puts them in power, right? Whatever interests there are that are controlling Kamala when she was the top cop or prosecutor are different than the interests now, right? The interest now is a popular vote, right? And she and Joe Biden are civil people that I think will necessarily bend to public pressure, protests, peaceful protests. They're not, I don't think they're the kind of people that will encourage people to drive cars into people that are protesting or open fire in people that are protesting. I don't think they're those kind of people.
No, my main I think if I agree with what you're saying, which I do to a degree, I do. If I agree with what you're saying, then I think it's even more incumbent on us to take advantage of the opportunity that we have with a potentially more open-minded leadership
Yeah,
to show them the way. If they are not the people in charge, but the ones who, help execute our desires, that we need to do a better job of making our desires known and demonstrating with where we put our dollars and our time what we
right.
value.
I think this election was a reflection on the shift in our discourse, right? The shift in our value system.
Yeah,
We globally, because of Generation Z, they're fucking awesome, by the way. The kids are great.
kids are doing all
The
right.
kids are great, and they see all of this. My niece, I told you this. My niece is 3 years old. She's born in the Trump administration, and she said that she unprompted. She said Donald Trump gave everyone the snake virus. That's why she. I don't know where that came from, but that's why she was pissed because she couldn't go to school. And then she's going around telling people to call her Madam Vice President, which is like, to me, this indicates, that the representation thing, but also there's this bigger effect of what discourse we have that is working and shifting. So I feel that we have a global shift now, or at least if the US, to borrow, racist conservative language, is the shining beacon on a hill, right? If the US is a shining beacon on a hill and our popular vote and our sentiment is
It's a
showing,
big deal.
right, is showing that
It's a very
we're
big deal.
we're choosing to move towards intersectionality away from fascism.
Yeah. I mean, I can't diminish that at all. My hope though is that, the DNC is a very, very big tent and it is
Yeah,
very, very powerful. And the same people who, gave Trump money also gave Biden money. So I don't want to see the same interests served under the guise of a new promise. I want to see
right,
that promise fulfilled. And what gives me hope is that the people have spoken about what it is that they want and they value and they're celebrating in the streets. And I celebrate with them in the sense that this is a beautiful victory. And I just want to see us, there's this beautiful quote. I have no idea who said it, but the city has a heartbeat and it beats to the left. I just want to see us go further and further in
no,
the
and
direction of, and that's anatomically correct. Yeah. Yeah. I just want to see us go further and further into the direction of what people are saying they want, which is racial equality, education equality, healthcare. I want there to not need to be affirmative action to put a band-aid on a gaping wound of systemic racism. I want us to start dealing with the actual issue and giving people the resources that they need in order to get ahead and making it way less difficult to get them.
right, which is why I think people like you, people like different comedians, right? If you are narrative crafters now, and let's call the last 30 years or whatever a wash, right? This was all skill building, this was all training.
Yeah.
So now you are in a position, and I think I either asked you this at the beginning of the episode or before the episode, but like, can you just jump, like, you can jump in to studio sessions, you can say, you're ready.
I'm ready.
You just need the eyeballs that are on you, right? So it's like, but you're ready to create, right? So now you're a narrative crafter. Comedians that I know and hang out with, they craft narratives, right? Everybody's got, not everybody, but generally there's this focus on like, I have something important to say, people need to listen to me. But I think we need to drop the people need to listen to me to just something that I'm about to say is important. It's not necessarily that I have it to say, right?
Exactly.
So it's like if you're crafting a narrative now, I think that there's like this implied responsibility that you have to push the needle towards intersectionality, to show these different instances and nuances in racial, you know,
But
disparity.
I think that goes back to what we were talking even earlier, like all of the great things that transcend time. We're talking about something that's bigger than us.
Mm-hmm.
I talked to Cecile McLaurin Salvant once. It was when I just started singing jazz and I was at Dizzy's, and they do this thing on Thursday and Saturday nights at the Coca-Cola Club where you can get up and you can play. And I'm playing with guys that are in the Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra, and I'm feeling out of my depth. And I'm singing, what did I even sing? I'll remember in a second. It kind of doesn't matter, but I'm singing this, kind of up tempo song, and I come off stage and I'm shaking, and I just sang in front of Cecile, and she's amazing. How many Grammys does she have now? Like 10. And I'm like, how do you get up there without being nervous? And she's like, well, I just focus on trying to give people a good time. Jakina Kalakango, who's an incredible actress, said, she dealt with stage fright because I used to deal with stage fright. She was like, well, it's just not about you. And I do believe that. And the times where I've not felt nervous in an organic way, it's when I'm so invested in the story of what's going on that I don't have time.
Yeah.
So I think that this is one of those scenarios where I'm so invested in people and in progress that I don't really have time to be nervous. I have to share a message of equality, of love. And I think the biggest message that I have for people is do the healing that you need to do to accept yourself, because you are absolutely where you're supposed to be, your home in your own skin, and no one can define you. Only you can do that. And I think that it sounds so simple and it sounds so esoteric in a way, but it is the real tangible thing that we have to walk with in this world, to hold our heads up high and to take up the space that we need in order to level the playing field.
Yeah, the kids aren't nervous, so why are we?
Yeah, exactly.
Last question. If you could if you could talk, knowing what you know now, to 16-year-old you that's riddled with doubt, doesn't know if she could sing, doesn't know what she wants to do, maybe knows what she wants to do, but doesn't understand that she can do that, right? What would you say?
I think I can answer that so clearly now,
Okay.
because I just learned what that thing is. I grew up hearing things like, from people who were mentors to me and really believed in me and saw in me what I didn't see in myself. They would say, "Get out of your own way," and I didn't know what that meant. And I know now that it means value yourself enough to choose yourself. Don't worry so much that your friends will forsake you if you spend the extra time just working on your voice. And don't worry that that's the only place that you'll feel a sense of community. The people who will accept you and love you will come into your life, but develop that for yourself and keep making art. Don't worry so much about being accepted. Focus on refining your craft because you are exceptional. That's what I would say to my 16-year-old self.
Did your 16-year-old self know what her craft was?
Yes. Yeah. She
Okay.
was acting already. She was acting, she was singing, she was writing some songs that I look back on now and I'm like, that was good.
Do you still have them?
Yeah, I do. I
It's time
do.
for a revisit.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Maybe that's some Patreon content.
Yeah, maybe my 16-year-old songs. Um,
But yeah.
yeah, I think I would, I have a list of priorities. You can't see them, but they're on my computer. And it's like myself, my creative intake and sharing slash, my romantic partner. They're both at number 2. My
Mhm.
work, as in for income, my family and my friends. And I try to remember that those priorities are very, very healthy and they don't need to change based on what's going on. Um, those can be core principles for how I use my time.
Wow. Can you list those one more time before we end the
Yeah.
recording? Because
Yeah,
that's
and I'm
great.
gonna shout out Carla Duren. She's also a singer, and she does coaching, and she was my counselor for a little while. And this was one of our takeaways. It's and I think it's also really helpful to like identify a sense of purpose. And for me, what brings me joy is sharing love. It's making someone else feel empowered and that they can. And I realized like I can get exhausted doing that for other people and not doing it for myself. So I'm the first priority. Creative intake. So I love to listen to music that's inspiring for me, reading great books and creative sharing. At the same level as my creativity is like a long-term partner. And like I said, I just started dating somebody new, so we'll see where that goes. But I'm treating him with the utmost respect. Then it's my job, my day job, my money job, my family. Obviously, if someone's sick, I'm gonna drop everything and be there for them. But family, I got to make sure I have money. I can buy my nieces some gifts, and then my friends. And some friends are like family. So family is really chosen family, and friends is probably like I like you, we hang into acquaintances. But those are my five priorities: me, creative intake, and a partner, work, family, and friends.
Wow.
And just putting it very simply that way helps me figure out what I'm doing on a Friday night. If I need to go to bed early so I can get up and go for a run and then journal, I'm going to do that because that's me filling my creative tank. I was talking to somebody who was like, if you have a table with everyone you love and you fill their cups with water, and they all have cups and you have a pitcher, if you don't refill your pitcher, you can't serve them. And it's such a simple metaphor, and I don't mean to sound like self-helpy, but I also mean to like take the bad connotation away from self-helpy, because
Yeah.
no
You're the one
no
that put
one
the
is gonna
connotation there.
no
I
no
didn't
one
say anything.
no one is going to no one is going to tell you that you deserve to go after your dreams. Like,
Yeah.
you have to do it. Maybe Lizzo will tell you and I'll tell you, but like, the distance between knowing that and feeling that is like, that's something that you got to swim until it's comfortable, until maybe there's no distance between those two things at all. You know it and you feel it.
Yeah.
But there are days where those two things are going to be far apart. Just try to always remember it and swim back there. Swim back there. I use that metaphor because, like, the way I learned how to swim was my mom and my brother would drift further and further apart from each other in the ocean, and I'd have to swim back and forth. And if I was swimming toward my mom and she drifted a little further away, I'd like freak out, and she would be like, "I'm right here. Come on." So that metaphor helps me. But yeah, I would tell my 16-year-old self not to waste time on this boy who you want to love you, who treats you like you don't deserve his love, who fetishizes you, who doesn't see you as a full girl. Focus instead on seeing yourself as a full girl and a full person, and pour your experience into your work and listen to more jazz.
More jazz. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's something I should start doing myself. But I'll get those pics from you after the episode. But yeah, no, that was a really good conversation. Thank you for coming on.
Ah,
Time here.
thank you for having me. This has been great. I hope it helps. I hope it wasn't too rambling, but
No,
um,
no, I mean
yeah,
I
that's
mean
what
it's a
clips are for.
podcast. I just throw it up and like however long it is however long it is. People listen. Maybe they'll come back to it. I'm just operating under the assumption or the operating premise that uh content lives forever, right? And the people that we have on this podcast are going to go on to do great things and have already done great things.
Yeah,
And so it's just like kind of like a patched together guidebook for maybe younger people that are darker or marginalized in any way, to just kind of see. It's like, so somebody that may be a young singer, that's feeling these different things, can maybe stumble onto this interview. I don't know how. I have to figure out how.
hashtag young singer.
Yeah. And but they can get these keys
Yep.
that you've been giving, and maybe their career will be a lot less turbulent.
Oh, I hope so.
Because of what the wisdom you were able to provide.
Oh, I appreciate that. Well,
So,
experience is everything. So,
mhm.
yeah, thank you again. I'm happy to come back and
Yeah.
see where we are in a couple weeks.
Definitely. No, we be a guest anytime you want. This was great. This was probably one of the longest episodes. So I'm just gonna cut this now.